All right, we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. Sorry that we're a little bit late or early, depending on how you do it. we started the show early today, but we're trying to start earlier than that. But I'm running the show because Mike, as you see, is on location in a
It's
strange.
always at that same wall in that same place.
Well, it's a cafe near Scotiabank Arena that thankfully has Wi-Fi and not bad coffee. So
Is it true they call it a Jello's Corner?
Oh yes, of course they've renamed it after me. And by the way, I need to celebrate it as a pre-show, April 1st, from an announcement yesterday. Vaccination proof only to get into Canada. So
that's helpful.
From the immortal words of Mike Jello, "Fuck you, COVID."
Hey, go. Wow, we're a kid show.
Oh yeah,
you're in another country and you're cursing.
We're gonna get flagged. We get flagged when you curse.
No, we won't. We're fine.
We do. It shows up. I saw it. It shows up on it.
That's the only. Okay, fudge you, COVID. There you
go. Not AOL. I mean,
it's the cat's out of the bag already. Yeah. Okay.
There you have it. But there you have it. It's over. So yes,
we're going
Russ,
blue.
Go ahead. Talk to me for a second while I get my tea.
Okay. I mean, first thing I'll say is, hey, happy birthday to my dad, who I won't give out his age, but he's really old. So anyhow, and his name is Danny.
Happy 27th birthday, Mr. Cohen.
And his name is Danny, so he has been a lot of times been
regaled with Danny Boy.
Definitely regaled with Danny Boy. I was just going to say, like, people have assumed that he was Irish because of the name and of the day, but that's just his thing. Anyhow,
is his middle initial O? So it'd be Danny O. Cohen.
No, that's funny though. So let's talk about Steely Dan. I want to talk about Steely Dan because they were the quintessential snooty, perfect sound, we don't want to tour band for really like 30 years. And then I saw the second tour they had, and their publishing money ran out, and they played at the Spectrum. That was back in the 90s. That was the late 90s.
That was when they won the Grammy for Best Album for an album that I didn't think was. It was sort of like giving somebody the Vesna 2 years after they were great. They won a Grammy for an album that wasn't that great.
Right. So then,
what album did they win a Grammy for?
I can't remember the name of it.
I can't remember the name of it either. Well, if you remember, you'll come up with it. But let's fast
forward. What band are we talking about? That would help me.
Steely Dan.
Thanks.
Let's fast forward to 2022, where they are now touring again because, again, they have no publishing money. And Donald Fagen is in charge because he's the only one that's alive from Steely Dan. Everybody else is just add-ons from the studio group. Walter Becker's gone. Steve Gadd is gone. They're all gone, unfortunately, right? Yeah. And this is the worst guy to leave in charge because Donald Fagen has always been a jerk, a Class A jerk. And now this was unbeknownst to me, but it was out there that he had actually invited Amy Mann onto the tour, and she was going to be on the tour. And I'm like, hey, this is great. Like, this is fantastic. You find out now Amy Mann has been let go of the tour. She's never got a reason why. And her guess is that her audience, the Steely Dan audience, can't handle a woman in the band. And
that's rough.
And that, and that's the inference here. And I do think there's probably something to that.
Okay, I can speak on this, Russ, because as a band that had a woman female singer, we got kicked off tours for a lot, just for trashing things. No, we were never that. We got kicked off tours for opening tours just twice in our time. Both by female bands that were other. So I don't know that the female singer thing. To me, what I found, and it really wasn't that we had a female singer. It really wasn't that. It was that there's
it was female on female violence, basically.
Amy Mann is a strong performer in her own right. Has a very specific niche crowd, and I think that her crowd probably wasn't into Steely Dan, and what was happening, I bet some of the shows, was that she was going out there.
Never even had a chance to play.
They were getting the feel that they probably were getting a feel that she wasn't, that her crowd wasn't going to be into it. Probably online, they were all saying things like, "I bet you that's what happened. I bet you some chat room somewhere."
Gone are the days when obviously now everything is more focused on have the opening act sort of cater to the audience that the main act is on. Like, for example, when I saw the Police, it was Sting's son's band, which wasn't particularly good, but you could understand why.
Interesting.
But back in the 70s, Rush opened up for Kiss. And they have nothing to do with each other in terms of musical
that's why
prowess.
They let them do it.
Well, there's a couple reasons for bands opening, and we've always heard that one is if the money is in selling out the house. Like if you sell the house to 80%, you don't make the money. So the money in a band is to try to sell those last 20% of tickets, and that's often done. That can be where an opening band can do that for you. So the opening band can add that. Mm-hmm. That's the one reason you have an opening band. The other reason is the band doesn't want to play long. Like Springsteen never has an opener because he's going to play for 4 hours.
And Genesis and Yes and Rush most of the time they don't have openers.
They had a couple of openers, but mainly they have not.
Or the band. The other two things are the band. Somebody in the band just likes this band for whatever reason and wants to give them a break. That happens sometimes too, which is nice. Or a record company is forcing it to happen, which is what the Russian Kiss stuff that you're talking about was. That was like, the A&R guy who signed Kiss also signed Rush and was like, went to Kiss and said, I need you to do me a favor. I need these guys open for you because I just signed them. There's a lot of reasons that can happen. And back then it was more about, it really wasn't about matching bands together. And it still isn't, honestly, I still don't think an opening act is really about matching bands together, to be honest. I really haven't noticed that to be the case.
Well, I mean, it really sucks because I like it. I mean, I love Steely Dan. I love their classic albums. Asia is one of the best albums ever made. But that doesn't stop the fact that Donald Fagen may be the American Robert Fripp as a complete and utter jerk. But I love Amy Mann too. I would have liked to have gone that show because I like both of them.
I know Amy Mann, and I know her
quote Steely Dan's people, which again is Donald Fagen on a pile of money and a PR person. Give a goddamn quote.
Yeah.
Steely Dan's people.
Why you released her?
What Steely Dan's people, first of all, is Donald Fagen's way of not saying anything, right?
Right.
That's to make it look like it wasn't his idea. He can be like, I don't know what happened.
I like Amy Mann.
I love Amy Mann. I don't know it must have been a record company thing. Right. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what happened. It's the passing the buck thing. I mean, we had like a classic run-in with Paula Cole. It was just I was going to bring that up, Ek, because a friend of mine told me, and I have no desire to see this because if you've seen Paula Cole recently in terms of her voice, it's really tailed off. But Paula Cole is touring with Sophie B. Hawkins this summer, and it's like, boy, these people are running out of their publishing money because
they're really popular back in the day. They were.
Well, Paula Cole had her moment, and she got a break. Yeah, that was the ironic thing to me, like, because my obviously hero was Peter Gabriel growing up, not obviously, but I've said it before, and
she was the background
singer. Got a break by being a part of the Peter Gabriel tour,
right?
And then we
was she the one singing the "Don't Give Up"?
No, that was right. But the funny thing is that
it talked over you. I couldn't.
It was Kate Bush on the album.
Oh, that was Kate Bush. That's right.
But Paula Cole did sing that with him live. Yes. So if you listen to the one album, the really good. By the way,
so it is from the live. I do have that.
Yeah, the live album, Secret World Live. That's Paula Cole.
Okay,
that's a phenomenal album too.
But see, she had a meteoric rise where she was Peter Gabriel's backup singer. Then she went on tour with Sarah McLachlan and got that exposure. Then she went on Lilith Fair, and right at the time Lilith Fair happened, she had the big single with "Where Have All the Cowboys Gone?" So but then it sort of died out. So she had two really good albums, and then sort of disappeared off the face of the earth. And now 25 years later,
let's be fair about something. Mike brings up a good point here, Ek.
Yeah.
In its day, Lilith Fair was good because it definitely was doing the right thing, catering to an audience. But how many guys crapped on Lilith Fair?
Yeah, I mean, we were on Lilith Fair for a while.
Wasn't there a lot of negativity that probably was not?
Yeah,
it
was. Of course. I mean, but it was hard to be. It was kind of hard to be negative because
it was short. It was
running the whole thing, and she's so solid. And she's also she's a girl's guy. Like guy's girl.
Well, right, but she right, and the thing was, Russ, there were a bunch of short-sighted people who said it was just a bunch of lesbians getting together, and that was stupid because the Indigo Girls played there and Tracy Chapman and a few, but no, it was just great music, and anybody who had that mentality were just morons.
My dog's outside, sorry. But I do remember that negativity, and the only reason I bring it up is it kind of seems like that negativity is back now for this. And like almost like, hey, you can't do this to Steely Dan because God forbid you change the sound of Steely Dan, even a micrometer. What would happen? What would happen if it doesn't sound perfectly balanced on the equalizer?
We got to get going.
We'll start. Right.
I could.
Final note. I saw Steely Dan live, and I wasn't impressed. They're a studio band, and that's it. Okay, let's start.
I'm not really a fan of them in general, but this is just me. I know people who are. My wife said it, and I liked it. Okay, here we go. Starting the show. It is St. Patrick's Day. Hello, Hockey World. It's Thursday, March 17th, 2022.
I'm Michael Agello, and this is Clear Guinness.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology, and he's a liar.
I'm Mac Lind, and you're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you in the comings and goings in the hockey world. And we are going to start today with a lot of some trades yesterday and some interesting trades. Of it all. And this kind of started off one that, and I want to admit that when the Rangers picked up for Hagee,
for Vetrano.
Frank Vetrano.
Vetrano for Hagee. I'm saying Vetrano, man.
They both start with a V. So there.
Yeah, sorry, I know, but a Vetrano. I was a little surprised because I think the Rangers got a hell of a steal there. Honestly, for a fourth round pick, Vetrano is. I watch Florida a lot, and he is a spark plug for that team. And he is also he's also a guy who scores goals when they need them sometimes, like in weird spots. Like a lot of his goals have been game winners. He doesn't have a lot of goals, but he is just the night before literally won the game for them with 2 goals, right? He is just, and I know they had to do it for cap purposes, and I'm assuming that they knew he's a UFA, that he wasn't going to come back. So
or that they weren't going to sign him.
Yeah, I mean, but he is a really solid pickup for the Rangers. And honestly, what a brilliant move by Drury to make, and I think could go down as one of the not so great moves by Bill Zito down the line. We'll see how that plays out. But but eventually, of course, this is all leading up to.
Well, let me just say one thing on this because I want to get Russ's input on it. Vetrano, okay, I think his salary was around 2.5, and we know the Rangers have a ton of cap space, so this was a move that they could make, and it may have been the move that they made after finding out that Hurdle signed the long-term extension with San Jose. They wanted to get a top 6 forward. And Russ, Don LaGreca was saying on ESPN radio yesterday, he's the play-by-play guy for the Rangers. Yeah. He said that, bringing in Vetrano, probably putting him on the second line with Strome and Panarin, that would allow Dryden Hunt to move down into the lineup and give him a legitimate, and he's not a top of the line top 6 forward, but he can score and he could fit in with that line. So that's not a bad acquisition for next to nothing.
It's a good acquisition. I'm not sure I would do that because I'm not sure I would have Dryden Hunt anywhere near the top 6, but Gallant loves him. So that's that.
Well, but this would bring him down. This would bring him down.
I get it, but I wouldn't even have Dryden Hunt on my top 9. If it were my team, but I'm just whatever. It's working for them. But Vetrano has speed, and he is sneaky fast, and he is a guy that has been one of these guys. This is where Bill Zito can afford to make a deal like this, and then the one we're going to talk about, because he's been able to find the gems and give guys homes like Duclair, like Marchment, like all these guys that he figured could do it at this level, but haven't really been given a chance.
Right.
Because he's been able to do all that. He has been able to also make some of these trades that you say, wow, he kind of gave up a lot, or wow, because, he did some really good scouting to help build his team to what it is. And now they're just looking for a few parts thinking they can win a cup. So I get it.
I get it. And it's definitely, there's a definite sense, I think, in Florida that, when you're this good, this is your chance to build a fan base, go long in the playoffs, build some things, this is a really important year. There's just, you
take a swing.
Yeah, I mean, this is a definite deal that shows you that. This is one of those things. Okay, they really want to have a long playoff run, and they really are concerned about their ability to defend.
I also think it's an indicator, and we'll talk about the other deal in a minute. I also think it's an indicator that if they're moving out of Vetrano, that they have, besides the deal that they made, that they have another deal in the hopper, because They wouldn't leave themselves shorthanded in terms of forwards. Trading Vetrano, unless you're going to bring another forward in, doesn't make a lot of sense.
I think they do have another deal in the hopper.
Right.
I think, from what I understand, it's somebody that, if you remember, like how the Bennett trade kind of surprised us all last year.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's got another player like that out there somewhere. I don't know who that is.
Well, a clue that might be the case is that I guess they're not playing Owen Tippett tonight.
Yeah, they're not playing Owen Tippett. They do like Owen Tippett though. And they have a little more faith in Owen Tippett still, I think, than some people do. So
no, I get that.
They like him until they trade him. That's what it boils down to.
Right, but they're putting him in bubble wrap in a sense to if they probably have a deal in place, they don't want to risk him getting hurt at the 11th hour.
We have to be realistic about this too. I know you have inside knowledge here, Eck, but at the end of the day, when they sent him down because he wasn't working out with Huberdeau, that was the end of Owen Tippett being on this team long term, no matter what. Even if he's on this team the rest of this year, he's not going to be on this team long term.
Probably. I mean, you're probably right. I don't have any knowledge about it at all, honestly.
He's a piece. He's a piece.
Yeah. All I know is that the only thing I know about Tippett is that he was a first-round draft pick, and that is part of his selling point in trades.
But that should not be. See, again, that should never be a selling point. Just because you picked him as a first rounder doesn't mean I have him as a first rounder. Doesn't mean Mike thinks he's a first rounder. And certainly he hasn't performed like what you would call a first rounder. So he's not a first rounder anymore.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you.
I know.
Well, ironically, that was the selling point at this time last year. The selling point on Sam Bennett was, well, he was a top 5 pick.
It's true.
Yeah, but also he did really well for Calgary in the playoffs. It's just during the regular season they didn't, accentuate these positives, and then they get him for a couple second-round picks, and now he's the player that
done as well as Sam Bennett, even in the past, Mike. We would speak differently about him.
That's exactly the point I'm making.
Yeah, there's no real guy for that. I don't think. I do think though that giving up the 20. Now let's talk about. All right. So first of all, 4th round pick. I can't believe they couldn't get more for Vetrano than a 4th round pick. That's the one thing.
Well, here's what I think happened, Eck, and I could be wrong. Yeah. I think Zito called Drury and said, "Hey, I know you're looking for this. I have this. You may not know about it. What can you give me?" Because he needed to clear the cap space, maybe as soon as tomorrow, if you know what I mean. So that's why. Yeah.
Well, okay. Let me start on the Sherratt deal because. Russ. I'll leave it to Russ to talk about the prospect. Other than the fact that I just heard on the morning show that the kid that the Canadians traded for is somebody who is in the same draft year as I guess Kent Hughes' son and Marty St. Louis' son, so they know him from watching him for years. So that's one of the reasons why. Now that might be BS, but that's what's being reported out there. I don't get this deal in the sense that maybe the market was bigger than for Josh Manson, because we know that Manson had I think a modified no trade, and the talk was after the deal that he would have blocked a deal to someplace like Toronto or probably any other Canadian market. But and I said this, and you said this yesterday, Eck. Manson is as good a defenseman as Ben Sherratt. I think he's actually better for what he does. Now, Sherratt can play both sides. Yeah. But Zito, maybe because of the competition for Sherratt, paid way more than what Colorado paid for Manson, and they both retained 50%. I don't have a problem with Sherratt as a defenseman, but the price that they paid is ludicrous.
But like I was saying before, he could afford to pay that price.
Sure.
Based on other things he's done to put his team in this position. So I think that's part of it. And look, I don't think he wanted to give up Ty Smilanic. Ty Smilanic is a guy who is fast. He's a goal scorer. He's a guy who could put some weight on his frame, which he's been doing in college. He's a terrific player and could be a second liner, but probably a third liner, and a guy who could score 20 goals in the NHL. He has that ability, whether he puts it all together or not. So far, he's on that track. And so I do have an article about him on Sportsology. I wrote about him pre-draft because I liked Ty Smilanic. I saw him in the All-American Prospects game, saw him before that, thought there was a lot there. And so this is something where, Zito probably said, okay, he looked at his team, he looked at the way Sherratt fit in and said, all right, this is legitimately what we need.
Yeah.
I have to make sure I strike while the iron's hot because everybody's after him. Montreal was already sitting them. And if it means I have to outbid everybody, then so be it.
Right. I think you got a sense that Toronto and Tampa also had interest in him. And I think that also plays into it too. Like, I think that played into it, because you really, at the end of the day, if it's not just getting him, but keeping him away from them.
Tampa was possible, but Friedman said that Toronto has been out on Sherratt based on the price for a couple weeks.
Yeah,
so
no, I want to stop that for a second. This is the thing, kind of statement. Okay, I know it's, first of all, I know it's not the case, but I also will say this, and this is very clear, that is what teams say when they don't get the player they want.
Sure. In retrospect, right.
And he goes to Friedman goes to Dubas, and Dubas says, "Oh, we've been on that for a while because the price was ridiculous." And that it's just I don't put any stock into that.
That could be a self-defense mechanism, and it could be the justification for paying that price later on for another defenseman. But I mean, we heard the Sherratt Toronto talk about a month ago, and then it really cooled that because I'm attuned to everything that's going on in terms of any speck of a rumor with Toronto. And I didn't hear Sherratt as a realistic rumor for a few weeks.
It did cool, but I also think sometimes that, Toronto things cool pretty quickly if it doesn't happen. And I think it's very easy for it to still, it's a single phone call to get it back. It's not like we're not talking about it doesn't, and I think that single phone call happened in the last couple of days. And I think they had more.
Possible.
Well, I think the other issue too, Ek, is we have to sort of take into account that I'm sure the Rangers were in on Sherratt.
Yeah.
And the
St. Louis.
Yeah, St. Louis probably too. The one thing that I will say about Drury, and we're learning about him because nobody really knows what he was going to be as a GM.
Yeah.
He is not going to just dump assets in the deal that he feels is like not worth it to him. Right. And like, I get it. They actually need a bottom pairing guy more than they need a top four guy, honestly. So I could see why they would bow out at some point with the stakes being that high.
Right. And they might be able to get a bottom pairing guy like a Braun for like a third round pick.
Like, so they'll probably be at the Flyers game again today watching Braun, I'm sure.
And remember too, another thing about GMs, and there is an unwritten rule among GMs that they don't want to screw other GMs, They don't want to make.
Yeah, I'm sure that there's something.
It really does happen, and people always think that's ridiculous, but it's not true. Like, if you're a GM that just always gets the way better end of trades, no one will ever do dealings with you ever again. You have to make sure that, and I think some of the returns to Montreal were players, like you say, it's a solid player for sure. But they also wanted to give something so that they can stay in business with other people and show that they're willing to trade. Think of it a little bit with Reinhart and Bennett not giving away that much.
Well, think of it this way in terms of the other end of the spectrum here in regards to Montreal, and I didn't think about this until I heard it this morning. This was Kent Hughes, and we know that Gorton has a lot to do with everything. But this was Kent Hughes' first trade, and they set a market price for Sherratt. And they were in a situation where, okay, we want to get as close to what we've put out there for Sherratt as we can, because we can't put out the perception that we're going to crumble as it gets close and take less. So as his first deal, he doesn't want to establish a reputation of being sort of wishy-washy. He wants to establish a reputation of being sort of a straight actor, and I think he did in this case. And
and now he has a good relationship with another general manager now. Like, he's made a deal with Florida, and that's always a good thing too. Like, general managers to talk about a deal that they both think helps them both. You know what I mean? And that's a positive situation, and it does matter long term for the success of a GM. And I think that too often that's forgotten about, and some GMs do mess up because of that. And they, and I think in a way, always thought that Brian Burke was a bad GM because he was willing to make an unfair trade in a way that wouldn't help the other team. And I say this with all due respect.
No, but that's true.
You know what I mean? And eventually what happened?
He also got taken advantage of when he didn't realize he was going to be taken advantage of.
But I think at the end of the day, that makes him a call guys are afraid to take a little bit.
He had his favorites in terms of GMs that he would trade with. He traded with Bob Murray in Anaheim all the time. Yeah. He traded with he traded with a lot of the USA Hockey people because he had relationships with them. Yeah. But I mean, all I can say is this: I understand why Zito had to pay the increased price, and I think that Hughes got a pretty decent return. But the other deal that was made, which was not a massive deal between Seattle and Calgary.
That in a second. One more thought on this though. All right. Remember here that the first round draft pick that's going to Montreal is not this year's, but next year's.
Right, but they traded both of them though. They don't have a 2022.
Right, I know, but what I'm saying in Montreal terms. So Montreal's asking for a first, a second, and a third, from what I heard, who were comparable players, right? So that's what they were asking for Sherratt. But that first was, they won it this year. So Florida doesn't have this year's first round draft pick. Right, so by putting that off a year, that also makes the next player that they had to put in there, I think, had to be a little bit better. I think you had to do that too. If they had a first round pick this year, it might have changed things a little bit.
And you could say that the prospect was the equivalent of a second round pick. So yeah, they got close to what they want. But okay, so the other deal.
Well, actually, don't bring up the other deal yet. There's one other thing. Okay. There's an elephant in the room with this one that we should address.
Yeah, let's get to that.
The elephant in the room is, so now if the Flyers do trade, let's say Claude Giroux says, I'm only going to Florida. There is no first to get. It's no point. There is no point in getting a 2024 first. There's no point.
Right.
So this trade has to be Denisenko and Tippett, or I don't make the trade.
Yeah. Right. So I've been trying to find out as hard as I possibly can if this means that Giroux to Florida is done, like it was out.
It could be,
and because I think it is, based on conversations I had earlier. But since this trade has happened, I haven't had any confirmation that Giroux to Florida is out. Now,
out meaning it's done.
That Florida is done talking about Giroux. I think Florida's, and that silence usually with me means that there's something to it. Mm-hmm. And I think that, and that's sort of the understanding I have with certain people. And I think that, let me finish the thought here. I think that it is going to be complicated because the Flyers definitely want a first round pick. I know the Flyers felt all along that Florida wasn't as serious on Giroux as Colorado was. They felt probably because they'd gotten better stuff from Colorado. And they also knew that Florida was going to address, I found this out last night, that Florida was going to address their defense before Giroux. So
because the market is evaporating.
So I don't get that Giroux is done yet, but if it is, but it's not going to be a first round pick.
Well, but that's the thing, because we take and Russ, we take Philadelphia's at their word that they're saying this is not going to be a rebuild, that they want to do a quick turnaround. Mm-hmm. So not having a first round pick in terms of Florida, that sort of goes hand in hand with what we've been saying in terms of they want guys who are ready to step in. So I don't think that means they're out. It just means who besides. It can't be Owen Tippett for Claude Giroux. That'd be a lot more than that.
It can't even be Owen Tippett and let's say even another one of their prospect defensemen. It can't be that either. It has to be Denisenko. It has to be that guy because that's the guy who's closest to making their team and having an impact in the NHL. Now, we could debate after that, is that still the right trade? Because maybe it's better to have the first. I think the Flyers should rebuild. I think they should have the first, and I think we could try and get the next Claude Giroux, but they probably don't want to do that.
Right. It really, what it comes down to is Fletcher needs more than just Colorado to be interested in this.
Yes.
And the problem happens here if really Colorado. Now, I don't think Colorado is the only team left, but I heard last night Carolina had interest. I heard that St. Louis still had some interest. Then later in the night, I heard
we shoot down Carolina in the sense that every deal that there's a guy out there. Anytime there's a guy out there of large value, we all of a sudden hear Carolina wants them. They're in on them.
Later in the night, I got confirmed that Carolina isn't in on Giroux. Oh, so I mean, these are the things. So, but then as the day went on, there's another domino here that plays into this. That's more interesting. And we'll get to the other trade, but things are all bigger than that other trade. The other domino that plays into this is the Minnesota Wild, who are absolutely 100% not in favor of Claude Giroux going to Colorado.
Well, gee, you can't imagine why.
Understand that, and they also who needs a center. Okay, but their first priority is still goal. Okay, they are going and they are I have zero doubt that they are going to make a huge pitch for Marc-Andre Fleury. That from from people I talked to yesterday, that is number one, A, B, C for them, and it's gonna and I know that Guerin. Kevin wrote today in his article that he believes that that Guerin's going to get permission to talk to Marc-Andre Fleury that ahead of time. So I think that that is the likely landing spot for Marc-Andre Fleury. But if for some reason they can't get it done, or if Marc-Andre Fleury goes someplace else, Colorado can't. Neither Colorado nor Minnesota can get both Marc-Andre Fleury and Claude Giroux.
Well, this is the thing, though. It's whether Minnesota or St. Louis or Boston or whoever wants Claude Giroux. It's whether Claude Giroux wants to go there. And if he only wants to go to, say, Colorado and Florida's out of it, then Chuck Fletcher is left holding the bag because he's limited to what where Giroux wants to go. And if Colorado knows that, then they're going to lowball him.
Well, I mean, again, there's a danger here. I brought it up yesterday, but I bring it up again today. When Helleson was traded, it's also Joe Sakic's way of telling Fletcher, listen, I can't wait around for you.
Right.
Like, I have a plan here, and I have different things that I want to do, and Giroux's a part of that. But if we don't come to some sort of agreement soon, you could see already that I will make deals. And Florida has done the same thing in a way because Florida's not waiting for anybody either. So after this game, if he's not traded to Florida or Colorado, then I believe Fletcher will get a better deal than we think. If he's traded after this game, then it's simply because he wants to go to one of those two teams, and Fletcher needs to do it quick because both teams are going to make other decisions.
Fletcher has been talking to both teams back and forth. I heard conversations that have had happen with both teams in different situations. So as Kevin, we've talked about it at length. He couldn't make a deal before tonight, and I think that was some, or if he could have, and kept it secretive, but I don't think he has. So for whatever it's worth, at this point, I think that you really are in a spot where Fletcher's very much in danger of overplaying his hand here. And
I agree with that.
Well, that's why he's probably going to have to jump early here, because there's no way he can wait until, say, Monday at noon. No. He's got to make his move probably tonight after the game, or maybe tomorrow, and then say, okay, that now we've done it. But he can't put this to the 11th hour. He just can't.
Yeah, he can't, and it's already kind of at the 11th hour, unfortunately. And the reality,
that's true too. It is.
The reality is, when they go out, they get Sturm, right? Colorado gets Sturm. Now Sturm is not Claude Giroux, but he is a defensive center, good face-off guy. Mm-hmm. So he's not, he's a Claude Giroux light in a way, and
he's not part of it.
Yeah, he's part of it, and that does feel part of what they were looking for Claude Giroux to fill. Now,
but they can still use Giroux on the wing. We know that. That
for sure. And he's Claude Giroux now. And Minnesota really would love to get another center too. They really feel like they're weak down the middle.
If they make a trade for Fleury, we know that Dylan Strome is available with Chicago. Maybe that's somebody that gets folded into a bigger deal. You never know.
Yeah, that's possible. I do think Minnesota really feels the need to go for it too.
And I'll tell you something. Watching Minnesota play Boston, I mean, the way that they've slumped the last few weeks, that's over with because Greenway's back, and Dumba's back in the lineup, and they pushed around a very physical Boston team.
Yep.
That is Minnesota's key. Is they probably are the most physical team in the West, and that is something that Colorado is going to have trouble. That they give when you look at the game,
they do give Colorado trouble. They do.
Yeah, they have a winning record over the last 3 years, a very strong winning record against Colorado over the last 3 years and mainly physicality. And a lot of I thought when Colorado brought in Kadri, I really thought a lot of that was for Minnesota because they felt like they were on a course with Minnesota.
Kadri's not physical. He's just an assassin. He attacks from behind. which
he's
he
not
does.
physical, but he's a distractor. And
yeah, he's a pain in the ass too. Yeah.
Just to answer a question here, because the chat room is hearing a lot about Jack McBain with a lot of different teams. He's a good player. His father played, I believe it was his father played in the NHL. And
Andrew.
He's a good, tough center who skates well enough. He's not a terrific skater, who can play well around the net, make good passes. He's not a big-time scorer, but he's physical, and he wins faceoffs, and he plays good, hard hockey. So, I could see Jack McBain being a chip here somewhere.
Is he no, where is he right now?
In college.
College
player, right? I thought he was a college player. Just checking.
Yeah, but he's a senior, so his eligibility, he could go Jimmy VC in August. He could go UFA.
Right, so he could get included in a deal here if they know where he might want to go. If he doesn't want to go to, because he's Minnesota now, I think.
He's in Minnesota. He is, and I that's why I was making sure I had the right person. I was trying to put it all together. That could be a chip in the Fleury trade.
Yes.
That could be something that goes back the other way.
There's also been talk because and we talked about it on the show about Minnesota trading for the LTIR contract of Shea Weber. That could be a summer deal where McBain goes to Montreal for the Weber contract.
Yeah. Well, that's what August is. Isn't August the
August 15th? But the decision has to be made by I think July 1st. Otherwise, it's like a month and a half. That there's basically a courting period.
Right.
Now, okay, that other deal. This is, I have to say, because I like Calle Jarnkrok as a player. He was really good in Nashville. Who was lost in the expansion draft to Seattle, but a 2, a 3, and a 7 is. Clearly Calgary is going for it because they way overpaid for a useful third line guy.
Well, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and I feel Sutter has it right now.
Oh no, he has it in a bad way. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, and I think that this is the player that Sutter loves, wanted him badly, and just as they continue to bring more guys in, they have only so many. There's only one puck, right, to go around, and also you've got these players on this team that are already ice time challenged. I've many times talked about Mangiapane, who is putting up the numbers.
Actually, he's getting more marginalized by the week, which is a shame. That's true.
I mean, but
no, forget that. X right though here on this.
I mean, it's like he's first in the NHL goals per minute played. The reality is that is the truth, and yet his whenever when a guy comes in like this, I think okay, there's less time for him, and is he going to get dealt? Is he really just somebody the Sutter doesn't like, despite the fact that he scores goals? I'm wondering. It is possible, and
I heard part of the justification for this deal, and sometimes this stuff is trivial, but Elias Lindholm, Jakob Markstrom, and Calle Jarnkrok are all from the same little town in Sweden.
It's better than that. Jarnkrok and Lindholm are cousins who were raised together. They've literally grown up playing every day together. So they have joked their whole lives about being on the same hockey team. They are.
Right.
Jarnkrok is so crazy excited about this because this is like playing with his buddy in the NHL on an NHL team.
This isn't like getting Butch Goring at the deadline. It's not.
No, but they
gave up a Butch Goring haul here.
Yeah, the price that they paid, I can't remember what the trade for. I think it was Dave Lewis and who was the former first overall pick. Billy Harris. It was Billy Harris and Dave Lewis.
Billy Harris was a pretty good player. Dave Lewis was a good coach.
Right, but not really. But a 2, a 3, and also this will be a trend that we have to follow before Monday. Jarnkrok, Manson, Sherratt. Every one of them 50% retained salary. That's going to be a key. Yeah. Every one of them, it's going to be retained salary.
Yeah, it has to be. And I mean, we're in that. That's just a flat cap era that has to happen, and it's just that's going to be, if there's any that aren't retained salary, I'd be shocked because it would have to be a team that's not in the playoffs now that's picking. It would have to be one of these trades of teams out of the playoffs to have that happen.
Now, here's something just to satiate the Leaf fans' appetite. If you look now, Ristolainen's off the board. Sherratt's off the board. Manson's off the board. the top 4 options are sort of evaporating. Where it's like, there is Klingberg, but I don't think Dallas is going to trade him. There is Lindholm, but and Anaheim is trying to get him signed, like San Jose got Hurdle signed.
And I heard the Rangers will offer more than Toronto will for Lindholm.
Right. I think it's going to end up being Giordano if they trade for a defense.
I've been saying that the whole time, and I think that's their guy. And I knew that was their target a while back. I think it's a smart target. I think it's the right move. I think.
Well, okay, for a number of reasons. A, he's from Toronto. I don't know if he grew up a Leaf fan, but there's been talk that he's always wanted to play.
No one has to tell him how to get to the arena.
Right, that's true. he knows his way on the TTC.
He can find his way around town.
He's an expiring contract, but it's not impossible that if they trade for him, that they could get him to sign for another year on a lower amount of contract. He's played with TJ Brody for years in Calgary, so that would be a ready-made pairing. The other thing is, and I think you can't underestimate this, Ron Francis has known Kyle Dubas for years. There was talk after Francis got dumped by Carolina that if he was going to come into the Leafs organization. They're both from Sault Ste. Marie, so there's a long connection there. I would not doubt that there is a possibility. Now, I don't know if it's going to be a first-round pick because Giordano is not the same level as some of those other defensemen that we talked about, and I don't know how many places he would go to. All I know is yesterday they were supposed to have the ceremony for his 1,000th game, and they ended up scratching him as a healthy scratch.
That was really messed up, I would say.
Yeah.
That's a Dave Haxtell special right there.
That is a Dave Haxtell. Well, that is the move that you can only make as an expansion team, first off. And any NHL, and it makes you not like an NHL team. It makes you feel like it's like you're not playing in the NHL world if you do that. Like, to me, that's like a real minor Mickey Mouse Club type stuff. That you got to play him in that game. Don't worry about it. I mean, I know you're trying to trade him. I think what happened is, honestly, if you picked up on this, I believe his announcement of his being scratched came like minutes before I put out there that Sherratt was being traded to Florida. And I really feel that whole thing is the second Sherratt got traded, they felt like his value was suddenly going up, and they got nervous, and they're like, okay, he's going to now be somebody that we really can get more for, because it was around, the whole thing was before it got out with all the other, it was around in the hockey sphere that this was happening. Sherratt was going to Florida. So
think about this. If I'm a fan of the Seattle Kraken.
Yeah, it's horrible.
He's the captain, the first captain in the history of the franchise. He's going to have this momentous occasion.
Yeah.
And you've pulled him because you think you could trade him. What does that tell me as a fan of that team?
It really just, yeah.
That is an asset.
Or if you're just a hockey fan in general, like you say you're a hockey fan who's lived in Seattle your whole life, and maybe you were a Vancouver Canucks fan for years, and you have like this like deep-seated understanding of what Giordano is about. Like, if you're a Canucks fan, you know what Giordano is about. He's been an arch rival of your team for years. You played, and that there's a historical aspect to this. So he is going to play his 1,000th game with another team. I guess that's what's
no. He played his 1,000th game. The tweet that was out there was sort of misleading. Giordano played his 1,000th game the same night that Wayne Simmons played his 1,000th game. It was the ceremony to celebrate, like they were going to give him the silver stick and all that stuff.
Well, but that's a little better, but still, that's a different story, I guess. I'll give him, but still, honestly, I'm not a big fan of this scratching guy.
It really is the same thing if you think about it, Eck. Whether it's his 1,000th or 1,001 game, you stole it from the fan base now, and if you trade him tomorrow, they never get to celebrate that with their captain. That's
something that's kind of solidified that team in the NHL in a way. Like, this is like an NHL. This is not his 1,000th game is an NHL moment. It's not just a moment, and that team to have an NHL ceremony of an NHL moment in their building helps solidify that team as an NHL team. Not just a team that's wearing weird uniforms that's playing in Seattle. Like, that's. So
what are they going to do now? They're going to be like, oh, hey, Gio, that silver stick, it's packed in your bag with your other sticks. We'll see you.
Yeah.
I guess, or they're going to have that ceremony in Toronto on Tuesday. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's like
Well, that's not uncommon because when Eric Brewer got traded to Toronto, he was like 5 games away from his 1,000th game. So he celebrates his 1,000th game, and he's given the silver stick for a team that he played 5 games with.
Okay, but this is Eric Brewer. Like Mark Giordano's a little bit higher on the scale. No offense to Eric Brewer, really good player, but a little higher on the scale. But he's also a captain of this franchise, and you have to. If nothing else, even if you scratched him, they still should have had the ceremony.
They still should have brought him out.
Which is
and give him something.
Which is the reason why when they picked him and then the announcement was made that he was captain, I'm like, okay, unless you're signing him to an extension, making him captain for a guy that is going to be traded was dumb. You should have made Jordan Eberle.
Day one, but they did it. So
yeah.
Well, they had the impression that everybody was under this. They had the Vegas. We're going to be a playoff team. They did, and they did, and
it's true. I was telling Mike, I didn't say it publicly, but I'll say it publicly now. There were a few of the writers in the region there that were acting early on like, yes, this is going to be a team that could compete for the playoffs, and they were writing that in the newspapers. And I said to Mike, they are delusional, but I never tweeted it or anything.
I picked them, if you remember, to come second to last in their division.
Yeah, Vegas.
I really felt
Vegas
like this was
Vegas
really,
fever.
Yeah, I really felt like that this just after I saw what they did, this did not feel like Vegas in any way, shape, or form, and they didn't have Marc-Andre Fleury. Like I said, that's what I said. Like the reality is that Vegas got away with a lot early on because they got great goaltending.
But we also had to factor in that team general managers were ready this time as opposed to not being ready with Vegas, that they weren't going to be held up because some got rid of players.
I buy that, but there's that being held up thing. Yes, I agree they weren't held up, but that held up stuff doesn't mean anything the first year. Like
they
that
still made bad picks.
Right. That held up means that Vegas had like more stuff down the line because those held up. They got held up for extra draft picks and all that stuff. The players Vegas went on the ice with their first year no different than the players that Seattle went on the ice with. They had the same same kind of thing. I mean, no, they had the same, and I don't think suddenly. I really think if anything, because of the flat cap, there were more options available to them. They just decided that they would go with a really weird. It felt like there wasn't. And I think to my dying day, Francis didn't have a real solid plan, and there were 2 or 3 guys. There were 2 or 3 plans that work at the same time. One plan was that we would get players that we could maybe trade at the trade deadline, and that's fine. And that hasn't worked out. Another was we get young players that we really like, but he didn't do what Vegas did. Let's get players who are really good but aren't getting a fair shake on their teams.
There weren't any opportunities to get a team to give them a Riley Smith and a Marchessault because Florida wanted to dump Riley Smith's contract. There weren't. I mean, that's what I'm saying. GMs were sort of wise to that. Now, could they have picked players better than Alexander True? Absolutely. But they didn't want to burden themselves down with cap hits on players like with San Jose. They probably would have had to take somebody had a significant cap hit, and instead they went out and spent money on players. I mean, I don't agree with the Alexiak signing. I don't agree with some of the other signings.
I think Alexiak is a good signing, and
it's not. And I'll tell you, in the chat room, Flamester needs to pipe down because we all know that Giordano was a captain of the Calgary Flames. That is not germane to this conversation, so just zip it.
He might be back, and he might have. He still might be back in the Calgary Flames for that 1,000th game celebration. I mean, the reality to what I'm hearing is that it is down to Toronto, the Rangers, and Calgary for him. And I do think one of those 3 teams is going to get him, and Calgary's one of those teams now.
Now, Calgary supposedly is looking for more of a depth defenseman, and I don't perceive Giordano as being a depth defenseman, but. If you're going to pay it, it's going to probably cost a 2nd or a 1st round pick in a deal, maybe a 2nd and something significant. So,
yeah, I mean, we'll see. I wouldn't. It's
the Rangers might be willing to pay that price. I don't know if Calgary can, since they just traded 3 picks for Carly Jarnkrok. And if they were going to trade for Giordano, why wouldn't they just trade him in the deal with Jarnkrok?
Pay that kind of price. The answer is
right.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I think that from what I heard, they've been very specific about keeping the Giordano deal separate from the Jarnkrok. They were talking about the 2 of them, but they didn't want, and that's sometimes a smart move on a GM's part.
Oh yeah, because 100 teams wanted Jarnkrok. Like, come on.
No, but to distract, like the reality here is like the thing is here, like let's talk about Jacob Chikrin for a second because he is like a guy who's still out there, right? and teams are they're not sure they're very uncertain about Arizona's game here. Like what they're trying to do.
The end game.
Yeah, their end game here. And you can definitely get caught up. The Rangers have to be careful, and the Bruins have to be careful now that Sherrod's gone. Florida was also in on Chychrun, but they realized that they couldn't sit back and just be distracted by what could be just a ghost out there. Like that's not real.
Well, that's why I don't think you've heard any names, because I'm sure if the Rangers were doing this deal, besides Kravtsov, it could be a member of their top 4 that would be in that deal to upgrade it.
Yeah,
like a Keandre Miller or something like that. Yeah, Russ, Howe or Lemieux, Yarncroke.
Well, yeah, Yarncroke, at this point, when Calgary wins the cup, he's going to get the cup first. They're going to pass it to him first.
I'm trying not to.
Darryl Sutter.
Here's the thing. I mean, this is Sutter's game world, and we're all living in it right now. Like he is going to do his thing, and it has worked before.
They need to you need to make a puppet of Calle Yarncroke. That is your job now.
Collie the chicken.
Yeah, I don't know.
Just like Darryl Sutter appears like a Muppet.
But Darryl Sutter is an easy one. Yeah, Darryl Sutter is an easy one for sure. I gotta figure out an animal that Youngcraft would remind us of. I gotta look at it.
Just talking about, like, I don't know. I've been running around here, so I didn't get a chance to read your blog and what names are out there other than what we just talked about with Giroux. But Boston is in a weird situation. I don't know how serious the injury to Bergeron is out, but I don't think it's a serious injury. Otherwise, I would have heard about it.
It's a couple of games. That's what it's.
Yeah. Okay. So that's not serious. But they have to be looking for a number 2 center, because right now, if they don't get somebody who is better than Eric Halla on their second line, they're not going anywhere. And I think
they're going anywhere anyhow, Mike. I mean,
well, you might be right, but I think
they're a team in desperate need. They really should have retooled for this season, even though they knew they could make the playoffs, simply because the loss of Krejci was too much.
I agree, but they sort of have that Aquilini Philadelphia mentality where they refuse to they've got Pasternak, they got Marchand, they have Bergeron, at least for this year. They have a couple really, really good players, but they don't have enough to compete with the Floridas and the Tampas.
Right, they can go around in the playoffs, that's possible, but they're not going to win.
Yeah, right. I mean, well, it depends. Like they have had a lot of luck in the recent years of guys stepping up at the right times. A lot of like a young player.
Charlie Coyle or something.
With their goaltending tandem now, they're going to win a cup. No,
I don't think so. No,
maybe in a couple of years when they get older, maybe.
But do you retool because you can't win a cup, or do you retool because?
Yes, that's why I retool. I retool because I know I only have X number of years left with Bergeron and Marchand, and Ullmark still needs to even get better as a goalie, and Swayman may be great in another year or so. So I have this opportunity to do better in the draft, to get my salary structure right, so I can make that last window open, because they only have one more shot at it with these guys. That's it.
Right. And see, that's the thing. In the case of Philadelphia, I think most people are advocating they should rebuild, but they're going to reset. And a team that should reset because they have a core group that's pretty good, like McAvoy and Pasternak. They should reset, but they're going to add to that group because they can't reset. Their fan base won't accept them resetting, or maybe their ownership.
Original 6 teams, and
it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter because it does, though. It just does.
Well, it's not going to matter when Chicago blows it up in the summer when they maybe trade Taves and Kane.
I mean the Canadians, sorry, Mike, are an original 6 team. They haven't won in forever. So what's the difference?
The Canadians are an obvious, like they've a total collapse situation, right? So they're very different. I mean, and they've
been collapsing since '93. Like
they made it last year, Russ. See, the thing is this. I mean, that we know that they shouldn't have been in the Stanley Cup final last year, but they were, and
they used witchcraft.
You can't go to an original 6 fan base after the Stanley Cup finals and say we're going to totally rebuild.
You can't, because the fans knew. Yeah. Their fans know that they were lucky to be in it last year. They did acknowledge that. I see that a lot.
I see it a lot too, but mentality, not a rebuild mentality.
You know who prevented for, I would say, a stretch of 7 or 8 years, who prevented a rebuild to happen in the biggest hockey market in the world? The management of the Toronto Maple Leafs, the coaching staff, because they had a vested interest. And the players obviously are going to try. The fans wanted a rebuild in 2007.
No.
In 2008, yes, they did.
Your group of fans did.
Actually,
but
I'm
saying that there are the majority. If you went through the season ticket holders in that building and asked them what they should do at that time, I think management was still responding to the fact that they wanted them to still go for it.
Now, Eck, I do have a little bit of breaking news. Jeff Marek broke that both the PWHPA and the PHF are going to meet on the NHL's asking. Again, This is never going to happen. I don't believe they will merge no matter how much money the NHL puts on the table, because the PHF is already making money and the PHWPA doesn't make any money. So in the end, just because they have some great players, and they do, doesn't mean the other league is going to completely change their structure, which actually at least has paying jobs, to all of a sudden do this because the NHL wants them to. I don't think it's going to happen.
And see, that's the thing. The NHL wants this hot potato off of their lap, and it's not going to happen because now apparently the PHWPA has got some sort of seed money, Russ. That's
you don't understand what we're talking about. We're talking about 2 women's leagues,
right? And honestly, this is never going to straighten out until one of these leagues dies, and there's only one league left. This is NHL versus WHA, and one of the leagues has to completely croak, and all the talent goes over to the other league for
You guys, and I can be as pessimistic as you guys if I want to be in this situation, yes. But the reality is, right now, what the NHL is doing is the right thing to do, because
it's not the right thing to do. I can
it'll
argue that.
It'll never cure it.
The PWHPA actually announced they were starting a league.
Yeah.
And when I asked somebody about that recently, it was barely answered as an answer, because there is no answer for it, and there was no league still. If the NHL wanted to really help women's hockey, they'd fund both leagues. That's what they would do. But there's only one league.
Yeah, but
that's the problem here. The other one is just a tour.
It's just a tour, right? And but it has big. See, right? The reason the NHL is doing this right now is clear, because the game between the U.S. and Canada drew the largest viewership, and right now is the time to at least try this. I think I give them some credit for that, because right now is
I give them credit for that.
That's why they're doing it right now. That's what's happening, because right now they're going to jump on this. I feel like Hillary Knight, and I've talked to her in 2 different instances. They have very different opinions on how all this should go. But they're hockey players. They're not business people. And as much as I respect,
and they've also been paid very well, where other people coming out of college have not been paid anything, and that's why at least there's something they can get.
Ideally, the NHL wants a WNHL. Maybe it won't be called that, but they want a WNHL similar to the WNBA, where they can sponsor it, where these teams can play in their buildings. But the only way that they can do that is if one of these leagues dies, or if they merge. And from what Russ has told me and what I've heard from Jeff and from other people, is that these 2 leagues, it's like oil. It's like fire and gasoline. They will never agree. So
they shouldn't have to, really, if you think about it. Why, if I'm a league that is already making money on our own and paying players, and you could argue whether they're paying enough or whatever, but they do have revenue sharing and everything else, and it's getting better. Why in the world would I want to merge with another league that has never paid anything?
Why did the NHL merge with the WH?
Because they wanted to eliminate. WHA was forced to.
No, remember back when Edmonton, Hartford, Quebec.
Yeah, they wanted to eliminate the it was competition. They wanted to eliminate the competition.
The NHL didn't have to. The NHL could have just let them die out. They could have.
They could have.
They threw them with lifeline at the end, right? And it
would have taken years, and it would have cost them millions of dollars at that point, because they were bidding on the same players.
Yeah,
and the PHF doesn't need a lifeline. They're doing well on their own.
Right.
They don't need a lifeline.
The only leverage that the PHWPA has is they have talent, they have players, but
there's also an ethical aspect to this that is out there too, and the NHL wants to do this the right way. They have to be very careful about how you do this. They can't come in too strong arming. They don't want. It's a very tricky situation for them, for all kinds of reasons, right? And we can get into this definitely, and we will get into this as it goes along. But there's a lot of side issues at play here, and yes, they want. I do agree with you. They would like have like the the WNBA type thing. They would love that, and there's no reason that the NHL doesn't have enough money to actually get both these sides to actually do that, because there is a. I don't agree with Russ that those will never happen, because I think that both these sides will, if both these sides see about are given the right amount of what they want and the right amount of money. I think that this might be something that I honestly, personally feel that Bettman is kind of taking this project on his own. I think.
Think about this, Eck.
Yeah.
The PHF just raised $25 million.
Great.
Do you think in any way, shape, or form the other league has done that without actually starting a league? No, because they would have started the league otherwise.
Right. So that doesn't mean you don't. So when you make this deal, the power is the money is here, the players are here.
It's not all the players. We have to be fair.
All the players, I know, but it's enough, but it's not just the money's here, the players are here. It's also this is like a union type situation over here, right? With the players that are over here, and they're trying to make a fair thing for for women everywhere, and in hockey, this has to be handled the right way, and I don't. It's going to take some. I do think Bettman could probably pull it off.
I don't think so.
He's one of the few people.
Let me ask you this basic question, Eck.
Deal maker. Yeah.
If you have your daughter was going into college starting tomorrow, and she was going to play women's hockey, what would be your narrative? Hey, you want to grow up someday and play in the PWHPA where you can go on tour and not make anything?
No.
Or you could join this other league where you could get drafted out of college. You may still have to have another job, but you know what? This will be at least half your year's income, if nothing else.
I would want her to be part of the PHWA. Or whatever I wouldn't be a part of that. Just like I wouldn't want the NHLPA versus the league and say, okay, if the two were separate entities, I wouldn't want just the league or just the NHLPA. You need both of those things to balance it out.
Well, that's a good comparison, because if you remember during the year, the lockout, the 04-05 lockout, with that, or maybe it was back in the 90s when they tried to have a players league and they toured all over Europe. It fell apart after about 2 weeks.
It did. And
so that's basically what the PHWPA has been doing here. And I know that they apparently have raised money, but they haven't put together. They haven't even played a season.
Raising money. It's great they raised $25 million, but that doesn't sustain anything.
No, that's the PHF. I'm talking about.
That's the PHF. It does sustain because they do have a product. They do sell tickets. They do sell merchandise. That does sustain them.
No, they're not. But how many years are you going to get? Do you think you're getting enough years out of that to make this thing into
That's
something?
Just additional money so they can add on teams. That's not operating cost. That's not like they need it.
The only way the NHL has basically pursued this in a sense of benign neglect. It's like, okay, let these guys fight it out. Honestly, I don't think anything is going to change here, and they're going to have to basically wait for one of these leagues to die. And once that happens, and then it's like, okay, if it's a PHWPA, fine, and if it's a PHF, fine, but one of them is going to be the winner.
And the thing is, you guys both might be right.
And the thing is that the women's game suffers because you've got a lot of talent out there. I mean, it's entertaining hockey, and I think that you could make a go of it in terms of having teams in different cities, but because these two entities are fighting against each other, they're just screwing it up for everybody.
They are.
One league has 6 teams. Another one isn't even a league.
Right, but is trying to represent the players in some fair way.
So if you're a PHF, let me ask you this question, as a businessman. If they just got $25 million, if I went to the table, if I was in charge of that league, I would say to Gary Bettman, well, you need to give them $25 million too, so we're on equal footing.
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say you have to accept this union of women's players. And that they are a unified front, just like we accept the NHLPA, and that has to be. And
we're bringing $25 million to the table. What the hell are you bringing other than names?
You're going to bring all the women's players need to go over to the.
That's anticipated revenue. I have cold hard cash.
I know, but you still have to represent the players. You can't just throw money at this thing without the players getting fairly represented because these women have been screwed so many times.
But they're not been screwed with the recent owner, and right now things are going well.
Yeah, but that's right now, and not you hear yourself, right?
Yeah.
Right now,
Danny Ryland's the problem. They got rid of Danny Ryland.
I know, but do you think these women are going to trust? First of all, when I talk to Hillary Knight, her biggest goal in life is to have a women's league run by women. That's the first thing she'll say.
Sure.
Because she's like, that would be
maybe in 10 years that could happen. But
my dream. And why did I say that? Because these men have screwed them, and they are really afraid of. They're just money is not. It's about money, but it's about long-term sustainability anyway as well. But
one league is still going. They've been going since 2015. The other one has never gotten off the ground.
Right, but because the other one's really not a league. Like I'm trying to say, the other one has to be sold as a union, and one's a league. And if you just
one
teach them,
one entity
both that they both can coexist and they have to work with each other, just like the NHLPA has to work with the NHL.
One entity pays their players. The other one is a utopian idea that hasn't paid squat.
And it shouldn't pay squat because it's not. But it should negotiate.
No. Well, okay. We'll agree to this.
What you're telling me is the other league, which is worth $25 million plus the players and whatever revenue they make, and this other group has just players. So let's just say this argument is it's $35 million on one side. What is this other group worth as they walk to the table? Even if the NHL gives them $10 million.
All right. Let's say I'm the owner of the group that has $35 million, $25 million, whatever it is. Okay. Right. I'm the guy who runs this whole thing, and I got players on my side too, and they've got some players on their side, like you said, and they've got some good players on their side. I go to my players on my side and say, listen, this is what I want you all to do. I want you all to join together with those girls in that, and have that union be separate for me, so you can negotiate with me, and we can come to collective bargaining agreements about what we're going to do in the future. And so all my players are required, just like the NHL players are required to be part of the NHLPA. And now you let that group have what it wants, which is not to be a league, but just wants fair representation. And
okay, but you know what the problem with that is? This league has figured out how to run by itself and make money. That other group does not know how to do that. If they did, they'd be doing it.
Right. That other group is a concept, not a league.
But they're going to ask for salaries the other league can't afford. That's the problem.
Right. But at the end of the day, it's all collectively bargained, and you're not going to get to the point where if they can't afford it, then everybody loses, right? So if we have to come up with something that works for everybody.
Everybody loses. That's the whole funny thing about this. If you want to play women's hockey, you can play for the other league. How is that losing?
And everybody's losing right now because there is no
right now. Agreed, Mike. But the only way for this to sustain in the future is to have this duality of these two different things. If I just have money and I run everything, and I tell you who gets paid, I tell you who doesn't get paid, I tell you this person there's no minimum salary, there's no anything, there's no guaranteed health care. I have the money, so you got to play for me. That doesn't work long term, and it would take a really strong owner to say, listen, we're going to collectively bargain this to make it work for both of us. All of our girls go all of you guys join the union. We'll pretend that that's the NHLPA, we're the NHL, and let's come up with something that works with where all the people over here who are in this group that can't run, they don't have a league, they don't have play, they don't know what they're doing. You're absolutely right, Russ, because they are literally a concept. But that concept needs to happen in this league over here too, and that's why I think there's a deal to be made.
Okay.
I don't know. I might be wrong, but I think that's what the NHL is going to try to do.
It's a good argument. I'm not going to say you're wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that's the. I don't know.
We'll see.
I think to me, you have to have both, and we'll see. But because you can't just be guys again calling all the shots because they have the money.
That's fair too, but then someone like Oprah Winfrey needs to step up, who has all the money.
Right. I mean, it would be great if that was the case.
Or Melinda Gates or somebody.
Right. Or some guy who says, yes, we'll negotiate with you. You guys we'll put something together.
You guys run it. Yeah.
That's what you need to do. Bettman wants the NHL to PA to exist. He does. He does, and that's what this owner has to want. That to me, that's the answer. I don't know. We'll see. But hopefully they get there. It's a long session. Thanks for all for listening. But I think that's a good thing. It's important, very important. And I would also say to my daughter, Russ, by the way, that I've been paying for college for 2 years already. What are you doing going to college now at a new college? And since when did you play hockey also? I would ask her that too. But besides those points,
This was a
Dual
fictitious thing that I asked you, Ed.
Dual sports, soccer and hockey. There you go.
There you go. That's all the time we have. I
And the
think
first 2 years of college are a waste anyhow. You could change your major after that. Anyhow.
That's true. But, she's lining up a lot of internships right now, so I think she's doing pretty good. All right, so here we go. That's all the time we have for today. I am going to tell you something that Kevin also wrote that I believe that, and I don't love it because I want the trade deadline to be good, but I believe that we're going to see a lot of stuff going on here in the next couple days, and also this weekend. And I don't know, we might be starting the trade rumors tracker on the website on Saturday.
Definitely.
I have a feeling that that's going to happen. I think the Sherrod deal last night has definitely sent waves through the whole thing. So stay tuned.
Dominoes. They're dominoes.
Yeah, shock waves that move dominoes. And we'll throw everything else out that we can. We'll see what happens next. But remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. And Mike, enjoy the game tonight. And the goalie who's going to get you into you're going to be your goalie of the future.
Here we go. This is Vesa Toskala.
And enjoy the Claude Giroux 1000 game.
Yes,
tonight.
Enjoy that, guys, tonight too as well. I'm going to post later. I'm trying to find it. It's out there somewhere. When Claude Giroux was first a Flyer, before he was a Flyer, I was doing a show called Flyer Buzz TV on Comcast, and I interviewed Claude Giroux in the back of our minivan driving around.
I remember that. I saw that. Yeah.
Before he was even a Flyer, he was in the minors, and I was supposed to have a Flyer that day, but Ken Hitchcock was on the road, and the Flyers had a bad game, and they didn't let them come home. He kept them on the road, so I had to go to the Phantoms, and I got Giroux, and it's an interesting interview because it's before he even played a single game in the NHL. So
they forced me to watch that as part of community service. So
I'm going to try to get that. I'm trying to find the link to it so everybody can watch
Were
it.
Were you at Guantanamo there?
No comment, Mike.
I got in a lot of trouble. Like, you'll like this because I got in a lot of trouble for filming it because Giroux, the entire interview in the back, was wearing a Yankees hat.
Oh, that's right.
And Comcast, I didn't even think twice of it. And then we bring the show to Comcast. Like, what? He's wearing you can't wear a Yankees hat. And I'm sorry, we filmed. I didn't know that.
Listen, Allen Iverson used to wear a Yankees hat. Who cares?
LeBron James wore a Yankees hat.
There we go. All right. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. We will talk to you all tomorrow. Thank you.